Welcome to HFY Galactic Stories, original science fiction tales, where humans face impossible odds, and the galaxy pays the price for its ignorance. Listen carefully. This is where legends are born. The Forbidden Question. The Universal Council Chamber existed in a place where three galaxies touched. Thelzara had never imagined such magnificence. The chamber itself was carved from a neutron star's core, its walls shimmering with impossible patterns that hurt to perceive. Gravity here was a suggestion rather than a rule. Delegates from thousands of species floated in assigned sectors, their forms ranging from comprehensible to utterly alien. Thelzara's skin rippled with nervous silver patterns. As a Viridian, her emotions displayed across her crystalline surface like light through water. She tried to calm herself, but excitement kept bleeding through in bright flashes. Her people had only joined the Universal Council 300 cycles ago. They were newcomers, children in a gathering of ancients. She took her position in the outer ring, where younger species observed and learned. Around her, other junior delegates settled into place. A chromath, its gas form contained in a shimmering field, pulsed a greeting. A being that resembled living metal nodded its geometric head. Thelzara returned their gestures, wondering if her nervousness showed as clearly to them as it felt to her. The session began with matters of trade and territorial disputes. Elder delegates spoke in languages that predated most stars. Thelzara listened, trying to absorb everything, but her attention kept drifting to the holographic display floating before each delegate. It showed the known universe in stunning detail. Millions of star systems glowed in colors denoting their allegiance. Trade routes formed luminous webs connecting distant civilizations. Everything was mapped, categorized, understood. Except for one region. Near the spiral arm of a modest galaxy, there existed a void. Not the natural darkness of empty space but something different. The map showed nothing there. No stars, no systems, no information. When Thelzara tried to zoom in, the display refused. When she tried to query the area, her interface went silent. It was as if that portion of space had been carefully cut from reality itself. She noticed other young delegates examining the same anomaly. A Zentari scholar, its insectoid features tight with confusion, gestured at the void with 3 of its 7 limbs. A Phosian delegate, barely visible in its energy form, flickered with colors that suggested deep puzzlement. The main session droned on. Treaties were signed. Boundaries were adjusted. Thelzara barely heard any of it. Her mind circled the impossible void like a ship circling a black hole, drawn inexorably inward. Finally, during a lull in proceedings, she made a decision that would change everything. She stood, her form brightening with determination. Protocol required recognized species to announce themselves before speaking. Her voice carrier activated, translating her thoughts into the chamber's common tongue. I am Thelzara of Viridia. I seek knowledge. The traditional opening felt heavy on her consciousness. I have studied our star charts as required of new delegates. I find an unmarked region. Sector designation reads as Terra. Yet no data exists. I request information about this sector and why it remains unmapped. The effect was immediate and absolute. Every conversation ceased. Thousands of beings fell silent simultaneously. The chamber, moments ago filled with the hum of 1,000 different forms of communication, became utterly still. Thelzara felt the weight of countless ancient eyes turning toward her. The temperature seemed to drop, though she knew the environmental controls never varied. In the highest tier, where the eldest species maintained their vigil, something moved. The Keeper of Records rose from its position. The Keeper was old beyond measure, a being of compressed time and crystallized thought. Its species had no name that younger races could pronounce. They had existed when the universe was still learning its own rules. The Keeper descended through the tiers. Reality bent slightly around it, as if space itself was uncertain how to contain something so ancient. When it spoke, its voice came not as sound but as fundamental truth, bypassing translation entirely. Every being in the chamber understood perfectly, felt the words in the deepest parts of their consciousness. The young one asks about the silence. The Keeper's attention focused on Thelzara. She felt that gaze like pressure, like standing at the bottom of an ocean. Her crystalline form dimmed involuntarily, a reflexive gesture of submission her species had evolved over millions of years. Then she will hear the first law, as all must hear it. Every delegate in the chamber rose. Those with bodies stood. Those without bodies intensified their presence. Thelzara remained frozen, unsure what was happening but instinctively recognizing the gravity of the moment. The Keeper's words resonated through the chamber, through every being present, through the very atoms of the neutron star itself. Terran space is forbidden. No vessel may approach. No signal may be transmitted. No probe may enter. No thought may be directed toward it. This is not law. This is not treaty. This is survival. This is the first law, and it supersedes all other considerations. There are no exceptions. There will never be exceptions. Thelzara's voice carrier trembled as she forced out a question. But why? What exists there? What are these? Terrans? The Keeper's form pulsed with something that might have been ancient sorrow. There is no why. There is only the law. Obey it and civilization continues. Break it and everything ends. This is all you need to know. This is all anyone needs to know. The Keeper returned to its position in the highest tier. The session resumed as if nothing had occurred. Delegates began discussing resource allocation in distant sectors. But everything had changed. Thelzara noticed that no one looked at her. No one approached her during the recess. When she tried to make eye contact with other young delegates, they looked away. Even the chromoth that had greeted her earlier drifted to the far side of its sector. She had become untouchable, marked by asking the forbidden question. That night, Thelzara could not rest. Viridians did not sleep in the traditional sense, but they required periods of stillness to process their experiences. She found no stillness. Her mind churned with images of the Keeper's ancient fear, with the absolute silence that had gripped the chamber, with the void on the map that refused to be mapped. She accessed the public archives, searching for any reference to Terra or Terrans. The results were strange. Not absent but damaged. Files existed but contained nothing. Records showed titles like First Contact Protocol, Terran Encounter, or Historical Analysis. The separation, but when opened they held only empty data structures, like buildings with all the furniture removed. She searched deeper, using academic credentials her position granted her. In the restricted archives she found something that made her form flicker with shock. Every species in the Universal Council had the same gap in their historical records. The chromoth, whose collective memory spanned 4 billion years. The Zentari, who carved their history into quantum matrices that could not be altered. The Phosians, who existed partially outside normal time and could remember events from multiple temporal perspectives. All of them had the same 3,000-year gap in their history, beginning exactly 12 million years ago. It was not that records from that period were lost. It was that they had been deliberately removed, surgically excised from every database, every archive, every form of recorded knowledge across thousands of civilizations spanning 3 galaxies. What could possibly require such complete erasure? Thelzara found one file that had escaped complete deletion, perhaps by accident, perhaps by design. It was a fragment, corrupted and barely readable, from an ancient chromoth chronicle. Only a few words remained legible. They were small, soft, short-lived. We thought them beneath notice. We were wrong. The awakening came in fire and screaming void. They showed us what mercy truly meant. We accepted the separation. We swore the silence. Never again. Never wake them again. The rest was corrupted beyond recovery. Thelzara's form pulsed with colors she had no names for. Fear, yes, but also curiosity, determination, and something else. A need to understand that burned brighter than her fear. She was not alone in this need. Over the following cycles she discovered others. Young delegates who had noticed the void, who had asked questions quietly, who had found the same gaps and fragments. They met in secret, in neutral stations far from the Council's core. 12 of them, from 12 different species, all bound by the same forbidden curiosity. They called themselves the Seekers and they made a pact. They would find the truth about Terran space, about what had happened 12 million years ago, about why the entire universe had agreed to forget. They did not know that finding the truth would force them to confront a question more terrifying than any answer. What could make species that had existed for billions of years, that had conquered death and mastered reality itself, choose fear as their wisest response? In the depths of space, in the sector designated Terra, something vast and patient continued its eternal watch. It had been watching for 12 million years. It would watch for 12 million more, or 12 billion, or until the end of time itself. It did not hate. It did not threaten. It simply remembered everything that had been done, and it waited to see if the galaxy had truly learned its lesson. The choice had been made long ago. Mercy had been granted once. There would be no second chance. The truth beyond the veil. The Seekers got together in a place that people had forgotten about. This place was a station. It did not have a name that people use today. It only had a code name that was used a long time ago in old star charts. Observation Point Ultima. The station was floating around in the space between galaxies. It It was something that an old civilization had built and then left behind about 12 million years ago. The Seekers were looking at something big enough to hold a small moon, but you would not find it on any map that people use now. Thelzara had found the address of Observation Point Ultima in a file that was messed up, and this file was hidden in pieces of history that people had tried to erase. The trip took a lot of time to plan. 12 people from 12 worlds, each giving up a lot for the truth. They went on their own using their ships and fake travel plans. Nobody could find out they were looking into the forbidden question. The people in charge never said what would happen if they got caught. The Seekers knew. Some things are too much for people to handle. The forbidden question was one of them. The Seekers were still looking for answers about the forbidden question. Thelzara's ship was the one to dock. When she walked into the station through the airlocks, Thelzara's crystalline form started to flicker because she was worried. The inside of the station was really big and really quiet. The emergency lights were still working after millions of years. They made everything look pale blue. The air was okay to breathe. It tasted really old, like something that had been cleaned and used again and again for a very long time and then just left alone. The other Seekers were waiting in a room that used to be a control room. There was Vren, a Chromoth. You could tell he was really nervous because his whole body was swirling around like crazy. Then there was Kesix, a guy from the Zentari, and he was tapping his 7 legs on the floor in a worried beat. Lunara, who was a Phosian and made of light, was not shining as bright as she usually did because she was scared. Along with these Seekers there were 9 more. They were all from different worlds, some old and some new, some strong and some not so strong. But they all had one thing in common. They really needed to know what was going on with the Seekers. Vren's voice was really quiet as it came through the room. This place, it said, is familiar to my family's past. My people made this station. We made it so we could keep an eye on Terra without being too close. The station was also made so we could remember things that we had promised to try and forget. My species, we built it for these reasons. This place is a part of my species' history. Kesix pointed to the middle of the room with a few of her arms. Look, the archive of witness is there. Our old records have one thing to say about it. It is one line that says, "The truth is waiting for people who are brave enough or foolish enough to go looking for it." The archive of witness is what we are talking about. I think the archive of witness is something that can help us find what we need. The archive was right in the middle of the chamber. It looked like a tree made of crystal with branches that went up to the ceiling, like lightning that had stopped moving. Each branch had a node at the end that had a light coming from inside. The archive made a humming sound. It had a little bit of energy that you could barely feel, like the archive was waiting for someone to turn it on. The archive had been waiting for a time. Thelzara walked towards the archive slowly. The people of her species really loved things that were made of crystals. She could feel what the archive was meant for. It was like it was talking to her. The archive was not a place to store things. It was like a person who saw everything and was made to keep the truth safe. This truth was so bad that it could not be written down in the way. It was so important that it could not be lost forever. The archive was made to keep this truth safe. That is what the archive was for, to keep the truth of the archive. She put out her hand. Touched the nearest node. The node was there, so she touched the node. The chamber just disappeared. Reality just fell apart. All that was left was information. The Seekers were not just watching history happen, they were actually living it. Time started moving, going through all the old cycles, ages and eons. The present just disappeared. The things that happened recently became a blur as they passed by. Old empires that had fallen apart a time ago started to rebuild themselves, and it was like they never fell. Some species even started to change into what they used to be a long time ago, becoming very simple again. The Seekers saw history and they were a part of it. They saw time reverse. They were living in the past. Time was moving backwards and the Seekers were experiencing it all. They saw the past and the ancient past. They saw the Seekers and history all mixed together. They went back 12 million years to a universe that was really young and very different. The universe was 12 million years younger. It was a lot different from the universe they knew. They saw a lot of things that were not the same in the 12 million year universe. The vision stabilized. The Seekers saw the galaxy as it had been before. A big and powerful group called the Predecessor Assembly was in charge of pretty much everything. They were the group to be in control of the whole galaxy, a team made up of the oldest species that came into being when the universe was still very young and full of energy. The Predecessor Assembly had the Chromoth in it. Also the ancestors of many other species that we still see today, like a dozen other species that exist now. The Predecessor Assembly was made up of these species. The predecessors thought they had done everything. They stopped people from dying by using machines that moved their consciousness to new bodies. The predecessors could do much anything they wanted with the world. They could change space and time like they were playing with Play-Doh. The predecessors went to millions of worlds and made them look how they wanted. Nothing got in their way. Nothing scared them. The predecessors were like gods, they had all the power. The predecessors could do things that seemed impossible. They were very smart and very strong. The predecessors and their technology were amazing. The predecessors were happy with what they had done. They thought they were perfect. The predecessors were the ones in control, they were the ones who made the rules. The predecessors and their power were unstoppable. They were like gods. That is why they had become so full of themselves. The people in question, they had grown really arrogant. The vision changed. The seekers saw what the predecessors were doing. The predecessors had these ships that were looking all around the galaxy. One of these ships was just doing its job, making a map of the area. It found a yellow star in a part of the galaxy that was not very special. This star had planets going around it. The seekers saw that the third planet from the star was a world. When they first looked at this planet, they saw that it had life. It was very basic. They found living things like tiny organisms. There were also plants and animals on this blue world. The seekers saw all of this when they looked at the predecessors' discovery of the world. There was this one species that had just started to walk on two legs. This species was really just beginning to walk upright. The survey ship looked at humans. Called them species 7924H. Humans are what we call ourselves. They are also called Homo sapiens. The predecessors did not think humans were special in any way. Humans do not live long, usually less than 100 years. Humans are not strong. They do not have any natural ways to protect themselves. Humans are not very good with technology, they still use tools made of stone. They are not humans, they live in small groups in only a few places on their planet. The humans were like that. The people who came before the predecessors did not think they were important, so they just dismissed them. Moved on with what the predecessors were doing. One scientist from before, a being named Vraxon of the Chromath, thought the humans were really interesting. He did not think this because of what the humans were. Because of what the humans did. The humans were weak. Their lives were short. They had to deal with animals that wanted to hurt them and diseases that could kill them. The weather on their planet was also very bad. Could hurt them. The humans did not give up. The humans found new ways to do things. The humans fought hard to stay alive. They fought with a strength that seemed much for what they could actually do. Vraxon of the Chromath found this very interesting about the humans. Vraxon came up with a plan for an experiment. He told the assembly that we should try something with them. We should see how stressed the Vraxon species can take before they give up. We should find out how strong the will to keep going is in the Vraxon because they seem weak. The assembly said yes. They thought it would be pretty funny. It would be a way for people to learn something new. The assembly thought it was totally harmless. The idea that the assembly approved was in one. The predecessors started to put pressure on humanity. At first it was really subtle. They changed the path of asteroids a bit, which caused big crashes on Earth. They also made people sick with diseases to reduce the number of humans. The predecessors even messed with the weather to make cold ice ages happen. Each time the predecessors did these things, they thought humanity would not be able to survive, that humanity would die out like other species that could not adapt fast enough. The predecessors kept doing these things to humanity, expecting humanity to fail. Every time something bad happened, humanity made it through. Humanity always found a way to survive. Humanity is very strong. That is why humanity survived each time. People did more than just survive. They actually got better over time. They learned from their experiences. Every bad thing that happened to them made them stronger and more able to deal with problems. When animals tried to hurt them, they came up with ways to protect themselves. When people got sick, they found ways to make them feel better. When it got really cold, they learned how to make fire and create clothes and homes. The predecessors made things harder for humanity. Humanity found ways to push back and resist. Vraxon became completely obsessed. He started doing more experiments without getting the full okay from the assembly. Vraxon introduced bad volcanic events that caused a lot of damage. He also triggered floods that affected many people. Vraxon released diseases that he had created in his lab. These diseases should have wiped out humanity many times over. Each time this happened, some people died and some people managed to survive. The people who survived became stronger, smarter, and more capable over time. Vraxon's experiments with events and floods and diseases made the survivors of humanity more resilient. People died under Vraxon's invisible torment for a very long time. They had no idea about the predecessors. The people did not understand that someone was doing this to them on purpose. They just knew that their world was very tough and mean. So they did what they could. They fought Vraxon. They kept going. The people would not give up. They would not die. Vraxon was still hurting them. They would not die. Something changed after that. The Seekers saw the vision of humanity. It showed them that people were at a very important point. For hundreds of thousands of years, people had to deal with a lot of pressure. They had to survive when things seemed impossible. The Seekers saw that people had to watch their loved ones die. They saw that people had to watch their civilizations fall apart and then rebuild again. Something important changed in the human species, the humanity, at that moment. The humanity was different after that. People started to look up at the stars in a way. The stars did not bring them wonder. Instead, the stars made them feel suspicious. They did not feel hopeful when they saw the stars. The stars actually made them feel angry. The stars were not beautiful to them like they used to be. The stars were something that made them think about things. People looked at the stars with anger, not with thoughts. The stars were the stars, but people saw them in a different way now. People had a feeling that something was not right. The disasters that the people experienced were happening often. These disasters were also happening at the possible time, which made things very bad for the people. It seemed like the disasters were planned to hurt the people much as possible. The people felt like something was doing this to them on purpose, like they were being tested in a mean way. The disasters made the people feel like they were part of a game and they were the players in this game. They were right. Human civilization really took off. They made a lot of progress in a short time. I mean, we are talking about thousands of years, not millions. Human civilization went from using stone tools to farming to writing things down to understanding mathematics to developing technology. The predecessors were getting more and more worried as they watched civilization. This was happening fast. It was like nothing they had ever seen before. Most species take a long time, millions and millions of years, to get from being very basic to being very advanced. Human civilization was doing all of this in no time, really just a tiny moment in the history of the universe. Human civilization was moving at a pace that was very surprising to the predecessors. Vraxen told the assembly that the experiment did not turn out as planned. The humans, Vraxen said, had come up with something that the predecessors had never seen before. The humans called it determination. It was really something more. It was an idea that the humans would not accept, that there were things they could not do. The humans would not accept that some things were just meant to be. They would not accept that anything was impossible to do. Every time the humans were faced with a problem, they found a way to deal with it. They went around the problem. They went through it or they went over it. The humans always found a way. The assembly decided to stop the experiment. They were going to leave humanity by itself and let humanity grow on its own, or maybe even fail on its own. The assembly and Vraxen agreed on this. Vraxen agreed that humanity should be left alone and the experiment should be terminated by the assembly. The damage was done to humanity. Humanity was changed by a lot of things that people did to it over millions of years. People were made strong by all the things that happened to them. These bad things should have destroyed people. They did not. People learned some things deeply, things that they do not even think about. They learned that the universe is not a place. They learned that they have to be careful all the time if they want to survive. People also learned that it is not an idea to trust that the universe will be kind to them, because that can get them into trouble. Humanity had been through a lot. It had made them very careful. The people reached for the stars. They did not do it because they were happy. They did it because they had to. They made technology, but it was not so they could learn about new things. They made it so they could stay alive. When the people finally figured out how to travel to space and started moving to places, the space travel and moving to other places was done by people who thought the universe was against them. The people thought the universe was their enemy and they had to be ready for it. The vision moved forward fast. The Seekers saw humanity moving over their solar system. They saw humanity figure out how to travel than light, which happened a lot sooner than the predecessors thought it would. The Seekers saw humanity take over stars, and they did it in a very strong and determined way. The Seekers watched as humanity kept growing. The Seekers saw that humanity was very good at taking what they wanted. The vision kept going. The Seekers kept watching humanity, and the Seekers saw that humanity was spreading really fast to other stars. Something big. Changed everything. This was the moment that changed everything. The moment that changed everything was really important. A human spaceship found some technology from the predecessor. This technology was a monitoring station that Vraxen had put in orbit around a planet that is very far away. The station was still collecting information about the sun's energy and how the stars are moving. The humans took a look at it. They studied the technology from the predecessor. They looked at it carefully. They tried to figure out how the predecessor technology works by taking it and putting it back together again. The humans did this so they could learn from the predecessor technology. They found out what it was really keeping an eye on. It was the Earth. The Earth is where they come from. It has been watched for millions and millions of years. It really hit people that everything bad that had happened to them was not bad luck. I mean, think about it. Every time it got really cold, a lot of people died. every time a lot of people got sick and died, every disaster that killed a huge number of people. These things were not accidents. They were not things that happened by chance. They were done on purpose. Humanity had been treated badly for a very long time by beings that they did not even know were real. Humanity had suffered for a long time, and it was all because of these beings. The predecessors thought people would get really angry. They thought people would react in a way, but it would not make a difference in the end. People were still not very advanced at that time. They were still pretty basic compared to the predecessors. The things people could do with technology were good for how old they were. It was nothing compared to what the predecessors could do, and they had a huge head start, billions of years of experience the predecessors had. The people who made it had no idea what the thing they made was. They really did not know what they had created. The people who made the thing had no idea what the created thing was going to be. They had no idea what they had created. People did not attack away. They did something that the predecessors had never seen before. Humanity came together as one. Every single government, every company, every person worked together with one goal in mind. They were not doing it to get back at the predecessors, even though humans were really angry. Humanity was doing it to survive. The humans wanted to survive, so they put everything aside and worked together for the survival of humanity. People have learned a lesson from the predecessors. The predecessors showed us that the universe is a scary place. The universe will try to hurt us, so we have to do whatever it takes to stay alive. We have to be willing to do anything to survive, no matter what the predecessors or the universe throws at us. The predecessors and the universe are really tough on humanity. In secret, people on hundreds of worlds were working together on something big. Everything they had was being used for this one thing. They named it the Awakening Protocol. The people in charge, the predecessors, did not know what was going on until the Awakening Protocol actually started working. The Awakening Protocol was a surprise to the predecessors. The vision showed what was going to happen. Thelzara and the other seekers saw it as something that was actually happening to them, not something that happened a long time ago. It was a bad thing that was happening to Thelzara and the other seekers, and it felt very real to them. The war was over in 72 hours. That is how long it took for everything to be done. The war lasted 72 hours, which is not a very long time. People had found something that the predecessors, who lived for billions of years, never thought was possible. This thing is called consciousness. It is the ability to connect every mind into one big mind that works together. Billions of minds can think together, share information really fast, and solve problems that would take computers a very long time to figure out. Quantum consciousness is a deal because it makes human minds work better than any computer, even the smart ones called AI. The awakening was not one person getting stronger. It was about the human race coming together to form one huge and really scary entity. The awakening changed everything. It made all of humanity into an organism with some really terrifying capabilities. The awakening was a deal. It was not just one person, it was all of humanity that was affected by it. In the hour, people figured out where all the predecessor facilities were, in the galaxy. Then they came up with weapons that the predecessors had no way to fight back against. After that, in the hour, the predecessor facilities were attacked at the same time on a million different worlds. The predecessors tried to fight back. They used powerful weapons that could break apart entire planets. The predecessors had technology that could actually change space and time. They had fleets with billions of ships. None of this worked out for the predecessors. Humanity was able to predict what the predecessors would do. Came up with plans to stop them. Humanity was able to counter every weapon that the predecessors used. The predecessors were also surprised to see humanity show up in places that they thought were impossible to reach. The predecessors just could not understand how humanity was doing all of this. Humans were not invincible all. They died in numbers, billions of them. Whole planets where humans lived were completely destroyed. Every time a human died, many more humans took their place. They were not afraid of dying because it had been happening to them for a long time, millions and millions of years. Dying was something humans were used to. What humans were really afraid of was disappearing, and they were willing to do whatever it took to stop that from happening. Humans would do anything to prevent their extinction. The thought of humans becoming extinct was what they feared. They would pay any price to make sure that did not happen to humans. By the time the first day was over, the predecessor assembly had lost half of the predecessor assembly fleet. The next day was even worse for the predecessor assembly. By the end of the day, humanity was in control of 1,000 predecessor worlds. The predecessor worlds were not destroyed by humanity. The predecessor worlds were occupied by humanity. Humanity wanted the predecessors to know what was going on with the predecessor assembly. Humanity wanted the predecessors to feel what was happening to the predecessor assembly. On the day, humanity did something that really messed up the predecessors. The thing that humanity did was so bad that it completely broke the predecessors. This was a deal because it affected the predecessors in a very bad way. The predecessors were completely broken by what humanity did on the day people discovered Vraxen. The vision showed the Chromath scientist, the one who caused humans so much pain for millions of years, standing in his laboratory. Human forces were gathering around him. He thought he was going to die. He thought he would be tortured. He thought humans would get their revenge on the Chromath scientist. The Chromath scientist was ready for the worst. The human consciousness, which was now together as one, talked to him in a very direct way. The voice of the consciousness was so loud that it sounded like it was coming from a billion people, and it was coming from a billion different places, all at the same time. We can hurt you badly. We can hurt every one of the predecessors. The predecessors will be gone. We have things now that can make it so the predecessors can never come back to any world they have been to. We can make it so that nobody remembers the predecessors. The universe will not know the predecessors ever lived. We can erase the predecessors from everything. Vraxen waited for the death that he knew he deserved. He thought about this for a time. Vraxen was sure that death was coming for him. Vraxen felt like he had done something and now he had to pay for it. Vraxen waited for the death that he knew he deserved. We are not going to do those things. Because we are different from you. We do not hurt people on purpose. We do not do things to people who cannot defend themselves. We do not treat people like toys for our fun. The people are going home. You are going to allow the people to go home. The human forces pulled back. Every single ship, every soldier, and every single thing they were doing to occupy the place just stopped at the time. The human forces went back to their area, to the part of space that is around their home planet. Then they came up with a rule that would become the first law. You are not allowed to enter the space that belongs to the people again. You must not try to contact the Terran people. You must not try to watch the Terran people. The Terran people want you to forget that they exist. If you do something that is not allowed, if you cross the line that the Terran people have drawn, the Terran people will not be kind to you again. The Terran people will become active again. This time they will not stop until the Terran people are the only ones left in the universe who can be heard. The predecessors agreed away. They put up the barriers. They got rid of the records. The predecessors swore the silence. This happened because in 72 hours humanity taught the predecessors a lesson. The predecessors are the civilizations in existence, and somehow they had never learned this lesson before. You should never think that someone is weak just because they do not do something. It is also wrong to think that someone is not capable of doing something just because they are being kind to you. Never wake up the things that want to stay silent. Never disturb the things that choose to stay quiet. Never assume that weakness is the thing as inability of the person. Never mistake the mercy of someone for their inability to do something. The vision faded away. The seekers were back in the station now, and the archive of witness was quiet in front of them. Nobody did anything for a long time. Nobody said a word. The seekers were trying to figure out what they had just seen. They were thinking about what the vision of the archive of witness meant to the seekers. Thelzara's crystalline form was really shining with colors that made me feel amazed and scared at the time. Thelzara said, "The aliens are still there, they are still in space, and this is, after a really long time, 12 million years to be exact." Vren whispered, his form was like a gas and it was hard to see him. "We are still changing," Vren said. Vren said that Vren and the others are still together. Vren is still watching Vren's friends. Vren is waiting to see if they learned from what happened to the people that Vren cares about. Keswick's limbs were shaking badly. "The first law is not about being mean to people," Keswick said. "It is about keeping us safe. Safe from the things we might do to ourselves. The people who came before us, the predecessors, they tried some things. They made something that could destroy all life in the whole galaxy. If we try to do those things with the first law, it could be really bad." Lunara said this, "They will not show mercy twice." When she said that her light was not steady, they told us something. They warned us about something. We are afraid of them. That does not mean we hate them. The fear we have is because we respect them. Thelzara finally got it. The Keeper of Records was not protecting them from humans. It was actually protecting humans from getting into trouble. You see, in that forbidden space there were billions of humans living in an advanced civilization. This civilization was more advanced than anything we have in our galaxy right now. These humans made a choice. They chose to be alone of killing everyone else. They decided to let the rest of the galaxy be. That decision had a condition that came with it. The thing is, it was something that could never happen again. Never again. The Seekers went back to the Council on their own without making a deal about it. The Seekers did not tell anyone what the Seekers had found out. The Seekers became keepers of the truth, taking care of the information that explained why people were scared. The Seekers made sure that the first law was still followed. This time the Seekers did it because the Seekers understood what was going on, not because the Seekers did not know anything. And in the Terran Space a signal was going out. It was really weak, so weak that machines could not find it. The people who knew what to look for could hear the Terran signal. We remember what happened. We are patient people. A time ago, 12 million years ago, we decided that peace was the best choice for us. We still think that peace is the choice today. We will still choose peace tomorrow. Please do not make us decide to do something. We really want to keep choosing peace. People were still awake, they were still waiting. Humanity was still awake, still watching.